What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and continue learning about Norwegian work culture. Part 2. If you haven't seen Part 1, feel free to go check that out first, or stay here in Part 2. That's perfectly fine as well. But in Part 1, I started learning about how the Norwegian work culture is very different to working in America. Such as the saying, Frihet under Ansvar, which means with freedom comes responsibility. We learned a bit about that. So today, I'm very interested to learn more about what the work culture is really like in Norway and how us Americans can learn from it, actually, because it sounds like Norway is doing some really good things in regards to working and philosophies of working. So I'm excited for this. Let's take a look.
You mean work and work-life balance?
Yeah,
Is that
work-life balance and like
yeah,
long-term
yeah.
careers.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a very strong work-life balance,
Okay.
and leaders in Norway respect that the employees also have a life outside of the workplace.
Ha! Ha! Oh boy. Excuse me. I went from I was trying to go from laughing to crying to make my point here, and it is that is so different than what it's like in America. Like, that's funny to me and also a bit depressing because that sounds so great. That is definitely how good managers should be, respecting the work life balance of the employees. In America, it's like your managers think that your whole life revolves around your job. And sadly, in America, if you're at work and you imply that work is not your number one priority, if you imply that work is not the most important thing in your life, managers don't like to hear that. They might even question your commitment. You might not get a raise, you might get fired. Like they'll be watching you. They'll be like, "Oh, Tyler doesn't think his number one reason for existing is work. I don't know about his commitment to the company." Like that, it's crazy because, and it leads to a very unhealthy work culture in America. So yeah, I think that's such a great topic to start out on today.
So Norwegians will typically leave work at 4 o'clock without feeling guilty, and they will.
I am never going to get through this video because I have to stop it every 5 seconds. What? 4 o'clock? I mean, I don't understand. Do you get to decide when you leave work? Because in America, you work 9 a.m. to 5. Well, usually 8 a.m. to 5 with a 1 hour lunch break. That's typical. There's no option to leave early. That's not a thing. You get in a lot of trouble. In Norway, I don't get it. You leave at 4 without feeling guilty. Well, how are you even allowed to leave? Is it actually up to you to decide? I mean, maybe that's where it comes back to, with freedom comes responsibility. That Norwegian saying we talked about in part 1. Norwegians seem to have a lot more freedom at work to make your own decisions. Managers don't really look over your shoulder and watch you all the time. You get to make the decision making. It's almost like you're your own manager. That sounds amazing. That sounds incredible. I love this, but sadly, I also think Americans would really struggle with this much freedom because it comes with a lot of responsibility. I actually don't think this would really work in America. A lot of Americans would take advantage and leave early, wouldn't get all their work done. Like, it would harm the company. If America, it's all, it's terrible to say. It's almost like a lot of Americans still act like children. We're not the most disciplined. Um, but I do think if we had a healthier relationship with our jobs, it would benefit the company. So maybe there's a sweet spot in the middle of these extremes.
Will leave before the boss. I mean, they will not think twice about. So this concept of waiting until the boss has left before you can leave is totally strange and alien to Norwegians.
Wow.
And
Yeah, in America, you you have to show your dedication. You have to show that you're working really hard. It actually doesn't even matter if you are getting work done. You just have to look like you're working hard. And yeah, you feel like you have to stay until the manager leaves. And this is to prove that you're dedicated. If you want to move up in the company, you have to put on this act. Um, Now, hopefully, at the same time, you're actually contributing and trying hard, authentically. But for a lot of people in America, I do feel like it is an act.
you will also find, if you have meetings in the afternoon, that Norwegians will start to leave the meeting and say that I have to pick up my children in the kindergarten. And this is also acceptable in Norway.
What? Oh my gosh, this is blowing my mind. This is blowing my mind right now. Okay, okay. This is normal. This is normal in Norway. You can leave. You can leave meetings, especially if you need to pick up your children. I don't know how Americans have done it for so long. Like, you, in America, you can't leave early to do stuff with your kids. You have to figure it out. In America, you're not leaving work. You just have to figure it out. You have to pay for childcare, or the child has to take care of themselves, or grandma has to come over and watch the kids. Whatever. You gotta figure it out, because this would never be acceptable in America.
Um, so there is, among foreigners in Norway, there is a misconception, I think,
Okay.
that Norwegians work short days and they work very little.
Huh.
And I think this is based on misunderstanding because
So people who move to Norway might look at all this and be like, what's going on here? Norwegians, compared to me, Norwegians don't work as much, they're not as stressed, they leave work early. And some Americans might look at that and be like, oh, Norwegians don't work as hard. Um, I don't, I, I agree. I agree with her. I agree with her. I think that's a misunderstanding. It sounds like Norwegians just work smarter, more efficient, and prioritize things better. Not that work doesn't get done. Norway is obviously an extremely successful country, one of the richest for its population. So no one can say Norway is suffering because of these philosophies. Norway is succeeding with these work culture philosophies.
Norwegians are very efficient in the work in the time when they are at work.
Right.
They have short breaks, short lunch break, for instance, only half an
Oh.
hour. And
Oh, you have a short lunch break. Okay. So that's half an hour right there. Americans take an hour for lunch. So that's half an hour of wasted time right there.
many people put in extra hours in the evening, for instance, after the children are in bed and so on. And this is
Oh.
not visible to the outside always. So
Oh, so you might do some work from home? Yeah, in America, a lot of people get very upset because a lot of managers think it's okay to email and text and call their employees like after work. Like, we suffer enough at work. You don't gotta be contacting us after work. And it sounds like Norwegians are much more open to that and maybe doing some work from home in the evening because you have a good relationship with your work. Whereas Americans are like totally burnt out, totally shut off after work.
So I think there is a productivity index where Norway scores quite high, actually. So this is a misconception about the not working hard. But the days are definitely shorter. And I lived in London in my younger
Wow.
days, and I decided to come back to Norway because of this. When I saw the long days that people worked in London, and with the
Ah,
commuting and everything, how little time they had with their family, I
yeah.
decided, no, I want to go back to Norway. So that
That's that's really interesting getting to hear her point of view as a Norwegian that has worked somewhere else like the UK. Yeah, the UK is like America. It's like you barely have any time. Man, after work, if you're working till 5 or later, especially if you have to commute home, if driving home takes an hour, it's you get home and it's like basically the evening. This is 5 days a week. It's really sad, actually. It's really quite sad, and I think a lot of Americans are depressed because of this schedule that we've decided is normal here. Um, I think if a lot of Americans could hear this and learn about the Norwegian work culture, I think it would open a lot of people's eyes. I don't think it's going to change in America anytime soon, but God, I wish our culture could learn from this.
that's what I did. Mm.
Yeah. Do you think that it's an interesting when you talk about that culture of the sort of Norwegians working abroad as well in London? I had one of my best friends who was living in London. He always told me about the long working days, and I asked him
Mm,
why. Well, what? And he said it's an expectation. But
yeah,
and I said it's a written expectation. No, it's just the way the culture works.
correct, correct. It's not part of your contract. It's not written. It's an unspoken expectation that if you want to if you don't want to get fired, but you have to do it.
Which,
Mm.
as you say, is very different from how the culture work in Norway. It's even though, like, I think it's like okay, it's important to stay at the office very long because you want to prove something to your manager or leader,
Yeah.
which is not that important for even the leaders in Norway. Wouldn't you agree? Would not like they would maybe look at you saying, okay, that person is working really hard and very long, but maybe they don't. Maybe they think that person is a little bit weird for doing that.
Oh man. This is so funny to hear about. It's basically like the opposite of what Americans think. In Norway, if you worked your butt off, if you worked extra trying to look like you're working really long, like you're working really hard, Norwegians might actually think you're strange. Oh my gosh. I think that is a much healthier attitude, though. I think that's a much healthier attitude. I like that.
Yeah, I absolutely. And I find that many foreigners come to me and say, oh, there's like racism almost in Norway, that foreigners are not promoted as leaders. And then I ask them, oh,
Ah.
do you take a part in the social activities at work? Do you drink coffee with your colleagues? Do you talk to your colleagues? Do you have lunch with them and so on? And then they say, no, I work the hardest. And then I haven't been promoted. Well, so this is a difference in Norway from many other countries that
Yeah, this would confuse a lot of Americans. It would confuse most Americans, actually. I'm not surprised to hear this. Moving up in Norwegian work culture, it's better to get along with your team and socialize. Whereas in America, it's really about working the hardest or just looking like you're working the hardest. It's very bizarre. It's not good. It's not good.
having a good work environment actually is more important than anything else.
Yeah.
So when Norwegians choose a job, when they ask what is most important when they choose a job, it is not salary. Salary is number two. What is rated as number one is having a good work environment.
Wow. I mean, that's so smart. I think in America we have our priorities out of order. Most Americans' number one priority is making money, whereas in Norway, it's making sure you are going to enjoy your work, enjoy your company, and have a good work environment. That makes so much sense to me, because that would be so important in your happiness, because you spend a lot of time at work. Whether you're American or Norwegian, you spend a lot of time at work. It's important that you're happy and that there's a good work culture. And for most Americans, we have accepted there's not going to be a good work culture. Work is not going to be fun. It's not going to be enjoyable. We already expect that. So we just think about the money. That's the only motivation we have. Because the employers here, the companies really don't care about us as workers. Not really, in general. Sometimes you can find good managers. That's true. But in general, the company doesn't really care about you in America, doesn't care about your happiness or your work-life balance. So we're kind of just forced to use money as motivation, as sad as that sounds.
And leaders know this. So it's very important to have a good work environment. And this is much more important than having really long days and working the hardest.
Yeah, and I think the learning you can take from this, if you're listening, is that especially if you're looking at hiring Norwegians in a work from home environment, is that if they are not online at all times, you shouldn't think that they are doing this to not be an active participant in your work. It's their life, so they are probably having dinner with their family, because usually dinner is like 4 or 5, or they're out skiing in the winter or doing some activities with their children.
Oh, wow. Do you actually have dinner that early? 4 or 5? This is so funny listening to this. In America, if you work remote, and you told them that you're having dinner instead of working, you would get fired. There's no question about it. You wait until work is done. In Norway, people are just like, okay, yeah, have dinner and then get back to work. Yeah. That's such a simple idea, such a simple thing to do. But in America, we never, it would never happen. Okay, I think that's gonna be it for today. This is such an interesting conversation. I love this. This is a video by Paul Arnesen. I'm loving what they're talking about. This is really eye-opening for me. So I will continue this in part 3. If you've enjoyed this so far, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts of Norwegian work culture, what you think about it, how it compares to America. That'd be really fun to hear about from Norwegians out there who are working. And if you're interested in part 3 of this, or more videos like this, me reacting to Norway, learning about Norwegian culture, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.